Hello and welcome. This is the nation's restaurant news webinar planning for 2026, how restaurant leaders are protecting profitability. Sponsored by Restaurant365 and broadcast by Informa. Restaurant365 is a cloud-based back office platform designed for restaurants that leverages AI to assist with routine accounting, inventory, workforce, and payroll chores, while connecting POS systems, banks, and vendors to support more holistic business views. I'm Alan Little and I'll be your moderator today. And I'll start by sharing a few announcements. This webinar is designed to be interactive. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll find the navigation center. Here you can participate in attendee chat, submit questions for our speakers, or download resources. Presentation slides will advance automatically throughout the event. However, if at any time you experience difficulties with the audio or the advancing of slides, press your F5 key on a Windows system or Command and R keys on an Apple device. This will refresh your webinar console. If you continue to experience technical challenges, please type your issue into the Q&A area and we'll be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. Towards the end of our webinar, we'll ask you to complete our survey. Please take a minute to fill this out before leaving, as your feedback will provide us with valuable information on how we can improve future events. Joining us for the presentation today are Mark Cohen, Solutions Architect for Restaurant365, Saul Cooperstein, Chief Revenue Officer at InKind, and Jacqueline Niesman, Business Intelligence Manager for BlackRock Coffee. If you haven't already taken a peek, check out our panelist backgrounders by hitting the info button on your webinar console and then scrolling down to click on his or her name or photo. With the upfront housekeeping done, I think I will hand things over to Mr. Cohen. Mark?
Thanks, Alan, and thanks to the Nation's Restaurant News for hosting us today. And thank you, Jacqueline and Saul, for joining us. I know we are able to look at our bios, but I'd love for you just to take a minute to share a little bit about yourselves and your companies. Jacqueline, start with you.
Hi there. I work for BlackRock Coffee Bar. We are at 180 plus locations. I'm our business intelligence manager, so I kind of manage and am looking at all of our operational analytics across the whole system. We're all corporate-owned locations, and we'll be opening a new one up in Austin soon. So looking forward to what's to come at BlackRock.
And Saul.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you to Nation's Restaurant News and R365. I'm a 25-year hospitality veteran. I've been with InKind for a year. We are a financing and marketing platform for restaurants. We are well through 6,000 restaurants now on our platform. It provides both a financing solution to restaurants and a marketplace for consumers to drive value. At InKind, as Chief Revenue Officer, I manage our data team and then our two marketing teams, both restaurant-facing and consumer-facing.
Awesome. And I'm Mark Cohen. I'm with Restaurant365 Solutions Architects. I've been with the company just coming up on 9 years now. So today we're going to be looking over some data sets from our State of the Industry poll, which is an in-app survey we do twice a year, where we sort of take a pulse check on the users in our platform on what they're seeing across the industry within the four walls of their restaurants. And we're also going to be taking a look at some data from InKind in terms of, what they're seeing on their side of the pond. So we're going to have a conversation about all these data points today. Jacqueline's going to weigh in sort of on what she's seeing in all these 182 stores of hers. And we're really going to be focusing on 4 pillars today. And those are food cost, pressure and pricing, labor and staffing, technology and loyalty, which I think is near and dear to all of our hearts, and then sales and guest behavior. So to kick us off, I just want to share sort of the demographics of the survey that we did at Restaurant365. So again, this was engaging with our users in our platform, asking them to just take a few minutes out of their day and give us sort of their sentiment. And we got a really nice dynamic cross-section of people that responded. Some owners, operators, we got accounting teams, a little bit of HR snuck in there. And then as far as the cohorts go, QSR, fast casual, casual dining, fine dining, all very well represented across these segments. So probably going to be no surprise as we get into food cost, what the respondents said in terms of what they're seeing within their 4 walls. But food cost is up. Obviously, it's not as up as it was in prior years, but it is continuing to increase throughout 2025. About 92% of the operators that we talked to said they saw about basically a cost rise of about 1 to 5%. And so obviously to offset that, a lot of them are still raising menu prices. And I think as we get into this, we're going to quickly realize that's not always a viable solution, and it's really not a sustainable one, right? At a certain point, the consumer is going to push back, and we just can't keep raising prices. So, groups are starting to focus on efficiencies. They're starting to focus on supplier, vendor changes, waste tracking, other ways to control these costs. and also obviously increasing top line revenue. So I'm curious, Jacqueline, I want to ask you, as an operator, how are you sort of balancing price increases from suppliers with guest price sensitivities? It's a pretty fine line to walk.
Yeah, I would say that no matter what we do and what we focus on when it comes to our pricing and our guest sensitivity, is we always focus on, are we going to be able to execute at our quality and the experience standard that we really set at BlackRock at the reasonable price to our guests. We have had to make menu changes because looking at margins of products, we have to make a shift. Sometimes that shift entails us having to look for a new vendor, having to look for new options as to where can we get a product of the quality that we want at the price that we need, because we are limited as to what we can really get out of our guests when it comes to that price, being a coffee shop. So we do offer our beverages, but we also have those quick service food options, bagels, burritos. Egg bites has been a really big hit at a lot of our BlackRocks, as we see that protein focused customer that I think a lot of people are seeing. So it really all starts with just sourcing of what it is that we're going to offer. Is it giving the quality experience that we want to our guests? And then are we able to execute on that operationally?
This protein is definitely having a moment, and I'm hoping the margins on egg bites are strong. Because that really is what it's about. We're going to be talking a lot about it today. It's margins, right? That's really where we need to be focused on. And I'm not just talking the bottom line. I'm talking across the board, right? You can get very specific, very granular. If you're not tracking some of these margins by day part, by service type, you might be missing the bigger picture. I think Saul and I both hear coffee and immediately think tariffs, right? How is that impact? Because it's one of those products that's international. So you were sourcing it from all over the globe. So has that impacted the business? Has that impacted your purchasing power at all?
Yes. So actually, like Mark mentioned, we actually roast all of our coffee at all of our BlackRocks. So we have 2 roasteries, one in Tempe and one in Vancouver, Washington, that they source all of the beans from places like Brazil, Timor, different places. We're always doing a weekly quality control. They call it at the roastery a cupping. So they will basically go through and test the coffee that they're roasting that week to make sure it's hitting our quality standard. Because sometimes, we're a blend for our main mix. So we have to make sure that we're kind of hitting that quality standard that we have based off where we're able to source coffee from, because we did have many scares last year when it came to the word tariffs. I think it put a lot of fear in a lot of people's minds. But what our director of roasting works really closely with our who we source our coffee from and those vendors that we have that relationship with. So we're able to get on, one-on-one calls with them on a weekly basis, if not more, just to truly understand what's going on, what's the impact that we can see from this right now and long term, and constantly closing that feedback loop, because we have such good vendor relationships, has been what's really allowed us to kind of mitigate the impact that the coffee tariff saw last year. I think, there's been a bit of a softening of that come this year, but we were only able to mitigate all of that because of kind of the consistent work we put in before then to always be on top of what we could be, ordering from the right places, putting in the correct, order aheads, futures kind of things, and just being prepared. But it really all stems from those vendor relationships that we have, maintaining those. So, because those vendors tend to have the most ability, the ability to work with us on pricing, the ability to inform us as to what's going on and what we can do about it. So we really, really focus on those relationships.
And some good leverage there, right? I don't want to lose 182 BlackRock coffees as my main, as a vendor. That would not be a good move for me. So let's talk a little bit about what consumers did as sort of we saw prices go up. And we're going to see with some of the data that Sal's going to share is, these price increases were not always the reason that we might have seen spending stabilize or dropping. There are other factors at play here, but we didn't see guests dramatically pulling back, but they definitely are being selective, right? It's more about an experience now than it is about, that value piece needs to be there as well. But I think that selectivity from our guests is really about what kind of experience we're providing in our 4 walls. And I think the biggest place we're seeing a decline right now across the board is in bar spend. Liquor, beer, wine sales are definitely trending downward. So this new generation is not, they're sober curious. They're not consuming as much alcohol as some of these other generations. Mocktails are definitely somewhere we need to be sort of playing around. And as a beverage focused company, Jacqueline, I know beverage has sort of become like the new snack. So good place to be in for BlackRock. But I want to look at some of the data that Sal provided here based on sort of, pricing works differently for restaurants than groceries. Can you walk us through some of this?
Yeah, when you look at how pricing works in restaurants, it's very uncorrelated to the overall traffic in the industry. So as prices go up, people don't necessarily stop going to restaurants. They trade which restaurants they're going to, and they trade cart. And they might go out the same number of times, but they'll reduce how much they're spending for each individual visit. So we don't necessarily see the total industry revenue deteriorating when prices go up. We just see people make different decisions. And this is a pretty stark contrast versus grocery, where people are actually making less trips. They're spending the same amount of dollars, and their traffic will go down. That people will spend $100 a week on grocery, and it's $100. If prices go up, they buy less things. Restaurants is a little bit different, where it's much more uncorrelated.
That's fascinating to me that then, as a consumer, right, they're spending the same budget, but they're finding efficiencies on how to make that food go further, which is very similar to what we do in the restaurant business, right? We sort of have the same reaction. I remember the great egg crisis of a couple of years ago, right? Everybody went into panic mode and people had to figure out easier, ways to make their dollar stretch further. So it's interesting to think about that in terms of like the grocery spend doesn't drop, but the frequency does, right? And to the point you make here, the last point, the decision for dining out is driven by that experience. Now it's not just price, right? Obviously there needs to be a value add there, but.
If you looked at this same chart for grocery, instead of just being a mash, it would be a much more linear down and to the right.
Right. That makes sense. Well, and let's talk about, I'm curious, Jacqueline, do you see that at the store level? Like, do add-ons sort of, do people stop buying that extra thing? Do they stop adding on to their meal? I know you guys are all about suggestive selling and promoting that, but have you noticed a dip in that when these sort of trends pop up?
I think even our like fast casual kind of quick like service offerings that we do have, I think we're just seeing a shift into more people want more from us. Like they'll order a food option now. Like maybe they'll get their bagel at BlackRock too, instead of going out to breakfast somewhere like they used to. So I think we kind of are on that like happy trend that we're seeing. We're seeing a significant amount of like more attachments in the food area, especially as we've kind of offered that to our guests. Sometimes we do see a little bit of that shift in the size, maybe a size down in a food option kind of thing is some things that we have started to notice every once in a while. But for the most part, we've just continued to watch that like our items per check and our transactions grow a little bit more, just because I think we're offering the right pairings with our drink offerings.
Right.
And it's always because we're kind of constantly focusing on that value that we're adding. Like you said, Saul, that experience. When you go to the grocery store, you aren't getting that experience just because you're paying more. So, spend's not going up, but people are definitely willing to spend more for that cup of coffee that they want, their energy drink that they want every single day. And then possibly either a sweet treat or, a little bit more of like a savory or protein packed snack that goes with it instead.
And they don't have to self-checkout at BlackRock like I do at the grocery store.
Exactly. They don't have to make it at home. It's made for you. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So I thought this was interesting too. So, these price increases, they're not really, I think, having the overall effect that I think operators think they are.
Yeah, I think that when we look at the data, and this is more of a conglomeration of data, or when you look even Chipotle, when they release their financial statements, they'll publish the amount that they check prices rose. And the amount that cart was impacted. So you get a very good understanding of what that relationship looks like. And only about 50 to 60% of price increases make their way to the bottom of the check. People are trading which items, how many add-ons, things like that. So that when people are underwriting and they're planning their budgets and they're indicating there's going to be a price increase, assuming 100% of it's going to make its way, even into the check, not even impacting traffic, but just into the check, I think is somewhere people have to be really careful.
Yeah, and that's, back to what I was, tracking those margins at that item specific level. To your point, if they're not buying that extra thing, then the price increase has the negative, impact rather than the positive one. Jacqueline, has BlackRock done any sort of price increasing in the last few years? Is it more regional for you, I would imagine?
Yes, we did take a slight price this December, kind of more to just fit with inflation and wage increases that we're seeing. But yes, we did take a very targeted price across specific items and whatnot. We're always well aware, and we do a lot of like post increase analysis as well, just like you mentioned, Saul, to understand, was there a shift in mix after this? What kind of impact did this have? Are we making the right choices in the price increases that we did make? So we're always very cautious of that, because we don't want to, shock our guests out of nowhere with something unreasonable. So we're trying to really mitigate that mix change as much as possible. But
smart. Well, let's talk about our other favorite cost center, which is labor. And really, I think a lot of the struggles we're seeing right now are around retention, which I know we're going to get into in a minute here. But overall, again, no surprises here. 93% of the people we talked to saw a rise in the labor costs of about the same, 1 to 5%. Interestingly, there was a smaller group that said it's been up about 7% since our last mid-year report. I would imagine that is probably regional, just due to maybe minimum wage increases or changes in employment law. But the average employee turnover rate right now is still somewhere between 11 to 25%. It's closer to that 20% number, which is quite high. Pretty standard for our industry, but it's definitely something we can do a better job of managing. And then again, 33% of respondents, they're planning, in order to maintain their turnover rates and reduce sort of that spend, they want to increase pay to keep staff engaged and really invest more, not just in their employees, but their benefits, their culture, sort of all the other reasons that people want to stay engaged and employed within our four walls. And I'm curious, Jacqueline, for you, as a national brand, how are these labor challenges sort of differ across regions, concepts? Store volume has to play into that.
Yeah, of course. Like Mark mentioned, we are across 7 different states: Texas, Arizona, Colorado, California, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. So we definitely see a lot of different labor pressure. It looks very different for even just our different locations. We have some locations that have that front lobby. We do have some that are still just drive-through only. Some, single drive-through. Some have a double drive-through lane. Like even just like the models in the buildings themselves, how many people can you fit in some of those double drive-through coffee bars? Is kind of small. And then what are you able to push through based off, just not even like just the design of the concept too, and what kind of efficiencies can you get? So we really have differing labor impacts based off our different store types, like the maturity of the stores as well as that volume. We really see like some of those higher volume stores can kind of absorb some of that labor more increasingly. But some of those lower volume stores, we have to really make sure that they're really on top of their labor, because those swings are seen a lot more drastically. So making sure they have the right tools so that they can make the right choices, whether it be scheduling or on shift decisions that they do or can possibly make. That kind of gets into the conversation, because we do operate across different states, just those regional wage expectations, and then also just labor laws that we have across those different regions. California and the PNW definitely have very different labor laws than places like Texas. So we've really found personally that working with the right people and getting the right people in that leadership role to manage schedules in the right locations is the best way for us to kind of manage this high level. Strong leaders that are super well trained to understand, what am I able to do? What am I scheduling based off of? And like forecasting, what's going to be coming, to make those like proper like labor adjustments and kind of create that efficiency right there.
Well, and let's talk about the other, a hot topic right now, I think, around labor is the tipping, right? Mm-hmm. Right. The tipping is based on this. Tipping is generational. It looks like. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing definitely 2 to 3 percentage point gap between youngest and oldest diners. It's very interesting to me that the tip rates are lower in fast food and coffee, which actually makes sense. Is that what you're seeing at BlackRock?
Compared to probably national average, yes, we do have like the tip percentages that show up on our POS after as like that kind of thing. We've seen that kind of increase over time. It also depends on locations and demographics and whatnot. But our team members are tipped based off of when they worked. So we really think that our team members are kind of really in control of those tips that they do receive. And it helps push them and encourage and incentivize them to work harder while they're working because they receive all of the profits of those tips during that time frame. So we really focus on that for our team members, just so that it feels fair to them and they understand. I feel like, I mean, years ago, did people used to tip at coffee shops? I feel like it's very much so like a newer kind of thing. I mean, people did, but to the extent that they do now has been kind of increased, I'd say probably with technology and just tipping has become more prevalent, I want to say, across the broader markets and the amount that people are tipping. But I definitely see people tipping probably more at a restaurant. However, our baristas do, you know, with that guest experience that they're giving, they tend to bring home some pretty good tips as well.
So were you surprised by these numbers?
The generational, no. I think that there definitely are some shifts going on, and it wasn't just looking at the gap between 18 to 24 and then 65 plus. It's also when we look at age groups within that span, there's really a continuum that the older you are, maybe the more generous you're getting, maybe you have more to be generous with. And it's independent of what types of venues you're talking about. It's the same trend holds for fast casual, QSR, as it does in fine dining. I think that, as Jacqueline mentioned, tipping before service or before receipt of product is something that is new. It's both been technology enabled and also legal enabled. California specifically, where I'm based, actually changed the law in 2014 to make it easier for those types of tips to occur. Prior to 2014, it would have been considered a mandatory tip and required payment of sales tax, and the state watered down what was considered a mandatory versus voluntary tip to not be what the customer experience is, but instead what the employee experience was. So that those types of tips don't require sales tax, which would have made it more challenging. That after the tipping, there would have then had to be a separate approval process that the tax would have gone up, and it made the process of integrating this technology actually capable.
And then this also allowed for the tip distribution to go outside of the front of the house as well, did it not? And we can start to share the tips across the entire restaurant?
Yeah, that actually was the 2017 tax bill that enabled that, and it's only when tip crediting is not in place.
Got it.
So either in states that don't enable it, that you can't do tip crediting like California, or not using it or utilizing that tip credit against wages in states like Texas that have the capability.
And so my father always used to remind me what TIP stands for. He said, to ensure prompt service. That was his acronym. So it's interesting to me too, though, that we're seeing labor costs on the rise, but to this data, Sal, you provided labor efficiencies probably the strongest it's ever been across our.
Yeah, and this is just taking straight government data from Bureau of Labor Statistics and Census Bureau and looking at total industry sales for the restaurant industry versus the total amount of non-managerial wages that are paid. And we can do the math, and non-supervisory wages are at the lowest point since 1994. The most efficiency that was ever gained was actually at the very beginning of COVID.
Yeah, you can see it. Absolutely.
When restaurants had a very immediate need to become more productive, to stay in business, yet before wages had kind of caught up and the supply of labor had gone down.
And I'm curious, Jacqueline, your labor model, because you're a business analyst, you've doubled down on forecasting and scheduling models, and really allowing the managers to own that process at the store level. But you're backing them up with the data they need to control this cost center.
Yes, exactly. We're making sure they have the most accurate forecast that we are able to provide for them as to here's what you should be spending on labor this next week. Now here you go schedule kind of thing. So we're always making sure that we're providing that, accurate and up-to-date information when they're scheduling, not just like the week before they actually are building the schedule kind of thing. Making sure that's available to them when they need it is super important to us, and that really helps us with creating that labor efficiency.
Now, looking ahead, I think, this is wage growth moderate. Can you walk us through this slide, Saul?
Yeah, when we look at long-term wage growth for the restaurant industry, the number one indicator that we've seen is the demand for labor. And this is looking at the number of open hospitality positions versus the total number of hospitality jobs. So what percentage of jobs are open? And then comparing that with trends in year-over-year change in wage rates. And we see a very strong correlation between those two things. Over the last, I'd call it 6 months, there's some separation where there still is a big pool of jobs that are open, yet wage rates have not followed suit and risen. We think that's because there's some weakness in the rest of the labor market. So that people who normally wouldn't be going and working in the industry, in the hospitality industry, are now flowing in, creating a slightly larger pool of labor.
Jacqueline, are you struggling to find people at BlackRock right now? Is that, or is sort of your mentality just to always be hiring?
Well, given our growth, we are kind of consistently always hiring. We're hiring in that younger age demographic as well. But because we're always growing, a big thing for us is just we do pride ourselves in maintaining an industry leading like lower turnover percentage. We're really trying to focus on keeping those people in our four walls as long as possible, and as long as they want to be there. And we try and always provide that. Here's that picture of growth for you at BlackRock while you're here. We're more than just, you can be more than just a barista if you want to take that on. So we really focus on who we're hiring. We haven't seen too many issues with, not having enough people to hire. We're, like I said, hiring that younger age demographic, and they want to come work at like a fun, cool coffee shop with a lot of the other young people in that like age demographic. So we're also kind of lucky just based off of our model, and our business model kind of fits that mold well, and people tend to kind of gravitate towards it. So we really focus on, who are we hiring? Are they someone that would want to be here a long time, could be here a long time? And then also providing that growth opportunity for them, and always showing them, here's what is next for you if you want it. You're more than able to move forward in BlackRock. We have something called the Career Path Growth Roadmap, and it really shows people as they start at BlackRock as a barista where you can go and how you can move up.
Something we're not great at as an industry in terms of showing that sort of career progression. If you want it, it is there, right? But Saul, I think there's two arguments here, right? I have heard arguments that lower turnover in some cases might be a better path. It might, then we're not dealing with increased in wages and promotions and everything we just talked about.
Yeah, I think that, we were actually talking before about how do you define a fast casual concept versus a concept, and the desire to control turnover is probably one of those big factors in pushing for higher quality and making sure employees are there longer term. I think that in rising wage rate environments where it's maybe naturally occurring and not based on year over year, employees say, hey, I've been here for a year, give me 2% or whatever the annual increases would be for service time. There's a lot more capabilities for turnover to keep labor rates down. Whereas in a tight labor market, that type of turnover becomes much more challenging for wages because you're going to be replacing with much higher cost people.
And then I think the other thing that really was something I don't think we're really starting to think about just yet, but like our long-term labor supply, right? So can you walk us through what this is?
Yeah, nearly 40% of the US labor supply for restaurants is 18 to 24-year-olds. And it's a group that has two challenges moving forward. The first is that the size of the group is going to be going down. I think it peaked last year or this year. And it's going to be deteriorating for the next decade or so at 1 to 1.5% a year. So there's actually going to be a lower pool of labor to target from. And then on top of that, the labor penetration within that group and the number of those folks who actually want to go out and work or will be going out and work is also deteriorating. So you've got this, double-edged sword of both a lower pool and less of that pool that's going to be out in the workforce. And that's really going to be hurting, the 40% of the labor base that fuels the industry.
I mean, Jacqueline, I would imagine the majority of that's right in your spot for BlackRock, right? That 18 to 20 something range. That's a lot of the employees that you're engaged with right now.
Yeah, it really is. It truly is kind of all we hire. But we are also seeing kind of some of that, I believe some of that retention of some of those employees as they kind of hit that past 22, past college phase, as it is harder to find jobs outside of the restaurant space. People staying for longer, one, because they enjoy it, and or two, people coming back because they left and they're like, you know what, I miss BlackRock.
Boomerang.
I want to come back and work somewhere where I enjoy the people I'm working with and I'm having fun and that kind of stuff. So we kind of, I think, are also sitting on like the good end of this trend.
But I do think we're right on the bubble here with this, and this is not something I think a lot of people are really thinking about, and it's definitely something we need to pay attention to in the coming years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it will also, it will probably also influence beverage sales. You have
Absolutely.
less start hitting that 21-year-old tipping point.
Yep, and we're already seeing that decline. So definite correlation there. Well, let's talk about something we all love: technology and loyalty. This is obviously somewhere we are seeing a lot of people looking to spend money this year, right? Really doubling down on their marketing tech, their loyalty tech, really getting a better way to engage with their guests on a first party level, right? So we saw this across the board, everybody we talked to, this is really the way they're looking to improve the revenue streams outside of just raising menu prices, right? Investing in those programs that drive frequency and drive, that loyalty behavior that everybody's chasing. And then, other people are looking to spend in staff enhancements, we just talked about, right? Better experience for the employee, increasing that retention rate. And then overall, 5% are just starting to dip their toes in the water of AIs. I think restaurant tech, I feel like we're always the last to catch up to something. And I feel like the same is probably going to be true for AI at this point, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Are you playing with AI at all, Jacqueline? Have you guys dipped your toe in that pool yet?
A little bit, but I would say not too much.
Okay.
But, eventually, one day. It's a slippery slope with AI. You have to kind of be careful in regards to how you implement that and who you give access to AI tools to, just that kind of stuff. There's a lot of, I would say, one thing from my tech background that I would say that I'm very hesitant towards AI is the sense of there needs to be a lot of, I guess I would say, auditing and validating and whatnot of what's training a model or where is that data really coming from, just so you don't get any of that weird, okay, this doesn't apply to us, this makes no sense, and put that in the wrong people's hands. You know what I mean? So gotta be careful, gotta do it the right way.
Yeah,
go ahead, Saul.
I would say on the AI front, I think that a lot of restaurants, maybe not on a first party basis, but AI is certainly fueling their third party. It's DoorDash or Uber or anyone else in that space. They're using AI every day, whether it's driver routing, scheduling, what they're showing to customers as they open the app, how they're promoting, how they're charging for ads and promotional space. It's becoming much more AI driven. And I think that, it's also not going to be, I would think initially, a lot of individual one-off products, but looking at some of the bigger folks, whether it's R365 or Toast, adding AI components to their system that will seamlessly integrate with the way restaurants are already working.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, we're probably all using it without even knowing it at this point, right? It's lurking in the background somewhere for sure. Well, I want to talk about loyalty specifically because that seems to be, like I said, that was the majority of the tech spend for the coming year, at least from our users, was getting some sort of first party loyalty program up and running. So InKind is a little bit different when it comes to loyalty. You guys have a bit of a different view on this. I'm curious.
Yeah, well,
December's a big month for you.
This isn't strictly about loyalty. This is more about generosity.
Right.
A little bit different, but every December we run a campaign that it's similar to what many restaurants do, where you sell gift cards and instead of you spend $100, you get 125. That same philosophy, we do it digitally across the 6,000, 7,000 restaurants on our network, where you can use it anywhere. And we give users the choice of whether you want to keep that added amount for yourself or you want to send it to a friend. And what we've seen over the last 3 years is that our users are getting more generous and wanting to share that experience with their friends, family, coworkers, whoever else they're sending it to, which we love to see.
Yeah.
And that type of generosity connected to people enjoying restaurants, I think goes a long way.
Well, and I love the idea that, to your point, that loyalty is becoming, it's less about discounts and promotions and, that Groupon effect, and it's really more about sharing these experiences now, right? That's a great call out. So Jacqueline, how does loyalty sort of work at BlackRock?
So we actually launched a loyalty app program, I want to say mid 2024. We saw great affinity towards a lot of people just signing up and, downloading the app, participating. We use what we call bolts, or what you earn on our app. We've seen like a lot of our highest frequency guests are kind of like just our most, like our largest avenue of like revenue stream, but it's also given us that ability in the loyalty world to, reach out to those people who we haven't seen in a while, the people that we used to see for a while, and then they kind of dropped off and become a little bit more dormant. Like, how do we reach out and re-engage with certain people?
Right.
Our loyalty app has really been a great place for us to really maintain that engagement with our guests. And that's kind of really where we focus on our different segments and our different markets, our different locations, and we can really personalize that loyalty program towards our guests and where they fall.
Yeah, and for me overall, I mean, restaurant technology at this point, obviously, it's no longer a nice to have. It's a financial necessity, right? As you've definitely figured out at BlackRock. I think one of the risks we get into that I see with a lot of operators, and Sal, I'm sure you see this too, is we can get data drunk at a certain point, right? There's almost too much information, and it can be overwhelming. So I mean, and Jacqueline, that's specifically why they brought you into BlackRock, so you could distill that data, right, and serve it up to your operators, so they're not lost in the sea of numbers.
Exactly. It's really one thing about technology that you can talk about. It's not just about data and information and technology and like the abundance. It's truly at the root. It's like, okay, what does this mean? And how can we instill that clarity with the information that we're given in smaller amounts? You know what I mean? It's not about the whole like giant Excel files. Like, what does this mean? What can I do with this? And how can we teach people to use the information and kind of really target what we do send to people for that? I have a lot of people that ask me for a lot of different requests in the realm of data analysis, analytics, but sometimes the question is, what do we need this for? And what does this mean? And does this more simplified method also, kind of tell the story that you're trying to do right there?
Does it move the needle? Yeah.
Definitely have to. Yeah, exactly. Does it really move the needle? Does it really have an impact? What are we trying to accomplish here? Sometimes people just, get lost in the numbers, get lost in that, oh, well, I need this, this, and this to prove all of this. You know what I mean? And that's not always the case, but it's kind of always just managing that as well with people, but really just giving people that actionable information that really matters, and trying to keep everything else away from them so they don't get lost in it.
Yeah, a mark on this front, what I'd say is that all of the bigger studies that I've seen are that 75 to 80% of tech spend is wasted. And
Yeah, it truly is.
The waste isn't that the product doesn't work or the technology doesn't work or it couldn't have benefit. It's that there's not actually buy-in and investment and use on the operational side of the business. There's the data folks in the back room or the folks looking at the spreadsheets. It's like a loyalty program only works when the person behind the counter is engaged with it, not when the person who's planning it in the corporate office and looking at a spreadsheet of like visits per guest is figuring it out. So I think it's really about how well things like this are operationalized. And I think that that's what Jacqueline was pointing to, is that the data is meaningless unless you actually have the people and the tools and the motivation on the ground to actually make it purpose-driven and accountable.
Yeah, the why behind it all. Yeah, that adoption piece is so critical.
If you can always stop and pause when the next shiny technology option comes your way and go, so what is this going to do for me? And what is this going to help me with, or my operators with, or whoever this is supposed to be for? What is it going to do actually? And really look and understand that. A big thing that we do here at BlackRock too is a lot of beta testing or like, field testing of certain things. One, it helps with just if it is a system that we want to implement across the system, it helps with that team buy-in, but it helps us truly understand that impact that this technology does have. It helps our operators see that. It helps us understand that. Is this really truly worth the investment? Does this truly add value in how we were expecting and or in a new way we were expecting? And then we can move forward from there. But it's true. Be careful. I'd always say be
and
careful.
truly operations, like, does it make a server's life easier?
Yes, exactly.
Does it make a host's life easier or more difficult? And like, if the answer is more difficult, even if there's that big potential gain, it's like, I would bet that it will not have the implementation and operationalization that you're expecting it to.
Yeah, very, very expensive mistake to make. Well, let's talk about our fourth pillar, which really impacts the other three we just talked about, right? Top line revenue, always great to have, but again, that can be deceiving at times, and guest engagement. So, no surprises here. Again, really, dine-in is less frequent. Takeout and delivery is continuing to rise, right? We're seeing that trend ongoing for the last several years. 43% of them are seeing a decrease in that dine-in frequency. That takeout and delivery piece is here to stay. So really figuring out how to manage those revenue centers separate from the regular business is, I think, critical. It is definitely a different revenue stream. And then that guest, those guest preferences are starting to change as well, right? We're starting to see that consumers are becoming maybe a little more health conscious. 20% of the people we talk to anticipate a higher demand for healthier options, better ingredients. I know, like, seed oils are a hot topic right now. Nobody wants to talk about seed. They don't want seed oils in their products. We just talked about protein having its moment. So these trends are really important. A statement I heard recently that I loved was that, relevance equals revenue, right? If we're not paying attention to what's happening in the marketplace, like, we become, and I feel like these trends change so dynamically and can change so quickly now. Like, if we're not paying attention, we jeopardize our business, and we could end up, desegmenting ourselves from our customer base. And one of the things I found really interesting, and saw this came from your group, was sort of these recent trend flip-flops that we've seen.
Yeah, and this was just looking across the restaurants on our platform. So it might not be industry-wide. This is the ones that we service, and looking at how things are changing year over year. And really weird that something like a Caesar salad would be really having a moment. This is not a new dish. Or chicken tenders, definitely not a new dish. Whereas some of the kind of, I'd say, more extravagant, showy items, foie gras, truffles, are seeing their moment decline.
Jacqueline, I see matcha at the top there. That's good for you. That's a good trend for you.
Yeah, exactly. We have seen, and we have sprinkled the matcha into a lot of our LTOs. So we're trying to do our best to stay on top of those big trends that we're seeing. What do people want? What are they looking for? And then kind of also including those in, like we said, our limited time offerings, where we kind of market like a new product. We have like the whole marketing campaign behind it, make it fun and interesting for people and get them to try something new, even if it's, a matcha with like a lavender cold foam, which we did last year. What's kind of that thing that everybody wants right now, and we're trying to make sure it's like fun and we can execute on it well too, and have it available for our guests.
And
another
big
thing I would say recently that we've seen is, we'll see how it kind of comes into the restaurant space, is just those prebiotic drinks and poppy and stuff like that, just healthier drink options that are just more and more prevalent, I would say, in just the broader span of what people are looking for. How does that blend into what everybody's doing?
And I will say one thing to be careful of when we're trying to sort of keep up with the times in terms of our menu mixes, right? We can be a little too aggressive or a little too quick to get to market and not really do the analysis behind the product we're about to put out, right? So really tracking those margins at an item level, not just the cost of the good, but the cost to prepare the good, to make the good, right? There's so many factors that go in. A bad menu item can erode your margins faster than anything else. And really paying attention to that when you're rolling these things out, similar to what we just talked about with technology, right? Slow rolling, making sure we've got everything in the right place to make it work. Because like, sales can be strong, but if shifting margins are getting ignored, like, you could be missing the whole picture. Averages lie all the time, right? So really critical to pay attention to something like that.
Yeah, we don't want to ruin our bottom line. That's kind of, at the end of the day, the most important part of it all. So we very much so focus on, when we're going to be doing these new products, what is our cost expected to be for this, and what can we charge for this, and what's that margin going to look like, before we even like, okay, we can actually execute on this. It's very much so important to stay on top of those things and think about it, you know, in the whole planning and preparation aspect instead of just, you know, getting something out there because it seems like it's what the public wants.
Right.
Has to make sense for the business.
And where does third party sort of factor into all this for BlackRock? Is that a big part of is that a big cost center for you?
Yeah, so we have seen a significant increase in third party over the past few years. I'd say that just those pickup orders in general, our app also offers like kind of that, you know, first party pickup options. For us, the hardest thing is just executing and making sure all of our different locations that are all a little bit different can execute, you know, that pickup order properly, especially for third party, making sure it's prepared and ready for people, viewable for people, like making sure the right, like pickup delivery people are picking up the right product. It's something that we have to really think about the experience of that and making sure it's, you know, at the quality that we also want for our guests. It has been something that we have had to deal with the past few years a lot more. We kind of expected to grow. Also, we do some like campaigns in the third party apps and whatnot to kind of increase the drive there. But it's something that we've had to kind of look at it at a store by store basis and be like, how do we execute this well at all of these different locations? It's definitely a challenge for some people specifically.
So the groups you work with, do you see a marketing spend there on the third party side? Is that typically a good place to spend marketing dollars?
I think there's a lot more analytic tools that are being developed right now to help on the marketing side. I think that when you look at the numbers that you get back from Uber and DoorDash, they're somewhat opaque to what's actually happening, and how you can really understand what the return on those things is not necessarily readily viewable in the way that it's presented. So I think it's up to operators to do the analysis, to do the testing, so they can really understand the incrementality of spend and not just the dollars that are shown as a part of it. You know, whether it's, you know, exposed ROAS and terms like that don't necessarily, I think, directly contribute all the time. There is certainly a lot of value to be gained through those channels. It just has to be done appropriately. We did a lot of work at a prior job in understanding like when the best times of day and days of week were to do that type of marketing spend, particularly focused on when we would call the most free agents who opened those apps without understanding going in where they wanted to go, when those folks were going to be there. You know, you get a lot more folks who go into those apps knowing already what they want to buy during periods and certain days. And if you start marketing into them, you're just cannibalizing your own sales at a cost. Whereas if you find the periods where people are opening the app to figure out what they want to eat, you get a lot better, you know, incremental result.
And Devin, you have a first party offering as well, right? So outside of the third party, you have your own. People can order directly from BlackRock if they want to.
Yep. We do have a loyalty app. So we do have a significant amount of our pickup orders do come directly from that loyalty app, actually.
And definitely seeing a shift with a lot of operators getting an app launched nowadays a lot easier than it was 5-10 years ago. And I think so. We were talking about DoorDash is doing some first party offerings as well now, are they not?
Well, they've got their storefront product, which is essentially a bolt-on first party.
Okay.
It basically mirrors what's going on DoorDash, but doesn't charge any delivery fees. It's web, not app at this point, I believe. And then they're also doing a lot of work to build out some additional restaurant infrastructure. They've acquired a few companies, whether it's 7rooms on the reservation side, Bbot 3-4 years ago to start building the type of ordering technology that restaurants would need, particularly across multi-concept operators like food halls. So they're definitely focused on delivering some more first-party actionable technology.
Yeah, more of an ecosystem almost. It sounds like it's smart, very smart. And you know, it's something I always talk about with third party too. Is, you know, managing it as its own cost center. I've heard some operators refer to it as just another type of tax, as far as they're concerned. But one thing I always call out to people, because this is such a large part of our business, like if you're not monitoring it from the guest experience, then I think you're missing half the picture, right? If you're not packing, I talk about this all the time, if you're not just packing up your to-go food and driving it around the block for 30 minutes and then eating it, then you don't know the experience your guest is having with your product. Because once it leaves your four walls, it's out of your hands. And the more you can do to control that, the better. Because then you're dealing with refunds and credits and the nightmare of reconciliation and all the fun stuff that comes along with that third-party piece. So another critical thing that I don't think a lot of people think about when it comes to third-party.
Yeah, you really have to look at that guest experience from, like we said, like every avenue that they want to access it now. We want you want to provide the best quality you can at however the guest wants to receive it, if that makes sense for you and your business.
Right.
So really understanding what's their experience, what can we do? We actually we created and branded we have some like branded bags now. So we've fully shifted how we process and do those takeout and to-go orders now too, just to like increase that guest experience, to make sure they know they're getting something that wasn't touched by somebody else, and it's safely packaged within a bag that is branded, and increases that marketing spend, or that branding as well, that marketing branding to our guests. But we want to make sure that they feel comfortable with what they're receiving from somebody, especially on the drink side of things. It's kind of a bit strange sometimes, but make sure like everyone puts the little sticky dot on the drink, just making sure you're executing on those things. We also run like secret shops to make sure that thing like that side of like the to-go and takeout experience is being done properly at all locations, and managing that, it's definitely a challenge.
Consistency is king. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, I won't be door dashing Eddie Uni anytime soon. I can promise you both that. One last question before we wrap up. I'm curious, if you had one financial priority to focus on for the coming year, Jacqueline, I'll start with you. What do you think that would be?
A big thing for us is just our cost of goods. It's our highest problem cost, obviously, as it is for most people. So really decreasing that waste, that variance, and helping our operators kind of understand, hey, we use R365 for their inventory management system, and it's been pivotal in understanding what our theoretical costs actually are, and what our operators should be spending on what they're based off what they're selling, within a range, within a allotted expected variance. But that is just key for us this year, is just really how do we focus on our bottom quartile locations with that high food cost variance, drink variance, whatever it may be, and help them, update their ordering, work on stuff like that. That's kind of really our key focus area, is just ordering waste and that execution right there.
Saul?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound trite, but it's the restaurant industry and sales cure all. It's kind of always the bottom line. So I think that focusing on the top line is critical, and then making sure that you do have all the work going into managing the restaurant. And sometimes those go hand in hand. The best operators are going to have not only the highest revenue, but also the best management teams and people. So, I think that's the type of place where it really pays to invest and make sure you have the right people running the right restaurants.
Absolutely.
Because it will drive sales, and it will cut expenses and drive margin. The other thing I would say though is that, and I know we don't have a slide on here, but there's a lot of regional macroeconomic drivers that are impacting sales. Just being based in LA, we can look at certain areas of the city like West Hollywood or Santa Monica. Sales in West Hollywood have been down 14% year over year for 3 straight quarters. In Santa Monica, it's 5 to 7%. The city as a whole is probably break even 1%, and still encountering the top type of cost pressures in cost of goods and labor, but in a declining or zero growth environment. And that's probably very different than a lot of the markets where outside of California, where the industry as a whole is still seeing 5-6% overall growth per year. So I think that the consideration has to be included in terms of what are those macroeconomic drivers in the areas that you're located, because it is going to be a big determining factor in how you can go about operating over the next year.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your input and your Just thank you for being here today. I thought this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking with both of you. Sal, you brought some great data points, and I think there are some looking ahead pieces that I don't think we've been considering that I will definitely be putting at the forefront of sort of how we're looking towards the future of our industry. And Jacqueline, thank you as always for providing your insights from BlackRock and your empire of 182 coffee shops. Alan, I think we've got a little post-webinar survey here you're going to want people to fill out.
We do want you to do the survey. We do have a question or two as well.
Okay.
Jacqueline, Saul, and Mark, I want to thank you for sharing those findings, observations, and insights. Very helpful. Let me move over to the Q&A windows. One of our questions asks, how can you tell if your tech stack is providing the right information?
Jacqueline, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I would say, are you seeing your technology drive an action after, whatever information comes from that tech stack, whatever it may be, is it driving some form of an action that makes your shop more efficient? That's really where you have to kind of understand, what's the point of this? What is it doing? What am I doing with this information? And what does that mean for my operators, my store, my barista, the person scheduling, the person ordering, whoever it may be? Is your technology driving some form of like a human action?
Yeah, I'd also say that, like, when you have lots of different systems, making sure that they actually are all showing the right information is critical.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that, delivery is one of these core things, or a menu might be another one core thing. You need to have that one source of truth that then uses the basis to flow into to all your different components of the technology that uses it. You don't want one source to be saying your revenue is one thing and another source is saying it's another thing, because they're looking at it a little bit differently. You really need to have that same methodology and numbers across the board. Otherwise, you will run into those problems of seeing bad numbers.
And that creates just that like snowball roll of questions and lack of trust.
Distrust, yeah.
Exactly. And that's something you really got to work to mitigate as much as possible, and really decreasing that difference. That was a good call out.
Okay, we have another question here that asks, when do you know it's a technology problem versus a people or process problem?
Yeah, I think kind of like what Saul had mentioned, it's first start with the question is the data wrong? Like, is this inaccurate? Is it not reporting correctly? Why is that? If that's not the case, if the information is all accurate, but the teams aren't acting on it like they should be, like what's that action that's supposed to be driving, then it could be a people or a process issue. Do they not know that they need to be looking at this and driving some form of an action from it? I think that's really where you start. Is the information accurate? Yes or no? Now I need to dive into what's the process that they're supposed to follow, and are they following it, and then coming forward, and then driving that action afterwards. That's really a couple questions you got to ask.
Okay, good to know. Well, we're bumping up. I got time for one last question. We're going to do a lightning round here, and that is, where do you start if you're looking to improve food and labor costs?
General manager.
Start with the people for sure, yeah. But then, Jacqueline, I think you would argue then get them good data.
Yes.
So they can act on it, give them something actionable.
Mm-hmm. But always start with the people.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll end with that particular thought. Start with the people. Folks, that's all the time we have for questions today. But before we go, we'll offer big thank yous to Jacqueline Niesman of BlackRock Coffee, Saul Cooperstein of InKind, and Mark Cohen of Restaurant365. Also, another big thank you to our sponsor, Restaurant365, as well to all you in the audience for your time, attention, and your questions. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive a follow-up email with details and a link to on-demand replay of today's presentation. Please feel free to share that with colleagues who may not have been able to join us live today. This webinar is copyright 2026 by Informa, and the presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by Informa. The individual speakers are solely responsible for his or her own content and opinions. Please join us for future NRN and Informa webinars, but for now, know that all of us here wish you a good day.